causing many mistakes? Behavior or judgment? Judgment. Absolutely. Everybody get judgment? Raising your voice when talking to other employees shuts down dialogue in the group. Behavior. Raising your voice. We're not judging. You can measure the volume with a decibel meter if you needed to. You're rude when you talk over top of other people and you don't let them share. Judgment. Rude is a judgment. You lack compassion. Your lack of compassion is damaging our team's performance. Judgment. When you stare off into the distance during important conversations, I wonder where your mind is at.
Behavior.
Total behavior. Your negative attitude is causing problems. Judgment. When you check messages during important conversations, it appears like you're not listening. Behavior. All right. How many got 7 of 7? How many got 6 of 7? 5? Okay. 4? I got some work to do. So, what I want you to think about when you're asking these questions, if I were saying that to somebody, what would I have seen or heard? What does a lack of focus look like? Or sound like? It's even hard to describe, isn't it? If you can't come up with an answer, I pretty much guarantee you it's a behavior. Sorry, it's a judgment. I look at you. Reboot. I can pretty much guarantee you it's a judgment. Yeah. That hurt. Talking about fresh. Ask yourself the question, what did I see? What did I hear? Think like a scientist. Don't make the mental shortcut to the judgment. We all do that. Don't ask what it means. Ask what you saw. What did you hear? If you can keep that separation, you can find the behavior. So, are we going to coach on judgments?
No.
Not a chance. We're going to coach on behaviors. Because you can change a behavior. You give feedback on behaviors, you coach on behaviors. One of the similarities why people sometimes confuse them is that we're going to coach or give feedback based on them. Some behaviors are very deeply set. And when they're set, they become a 5-letter word that begins with H. Habit. How easy is it to break a habit? Have you tried to create a new habit lately? This is kind of fun. Seriously, has anybody tried to create a new habit lately?
Yeah.
Andrew, what'd you do?
So instead of waking up in the morning and smoking my vape right away, I wait 10 minutes, and then next day I'll wait 15.
So you're trying to push it out further?
Yes.
Cool. Excellent. How's it going?
Pretty good.
Is you up to 2 hours yet? Or did you just start yesterday?
You know what? I've only vaped. I didn't vape in my car driving here. I vaped when I left my car walking here.
Okay. So you've been up for quite a while, so you've actually moved the dial on that habit a lot.
Yeah.
That's cool. Excellent. Gabe, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, the habit of thinking more positively.
And yeah, that's almost a discipline. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of crucial. It sounds like after the week you had, it's even more important.
Yeah.
So I decided in 2017 that I wanted to change several habits. I like to go big. So on January 1st, I wrote 15 goals that I wanted to achieve for the year. We are now on May the 19th. I have written those, I actually added 3, so I have 18 goals that I want to achieve in 2017. And I write them out first thing in the morning, every day. I've written them for 5 straight months, every day, no fail. Even the day after I laid on the floor in the restaurant when I was really hungover, still wrote them. I didn't work out that day though. That's all I could do to get up. So I did that. I started a gratitude journal in March, and I've done that every day for about 90 straight days. So it's now a new habit. I found this really cool thing. Have you guys ever seen the Coach Me app? It's like a little C for Coach Me. It's really cool because it gives me a reminder first thing in the morning to fill out my gratitude journal, to do my 10 minutes of exercise before 10, and to do my ab workout. Have you noticed like I'm slim? That was earlier. What did the 0 say to the 8? I'm tired. No, the 8 said to the 0. Now, so I started a number of different habits, and it's really kind of fun building habits. They're hard to build, and they're even harder to break. Because once they get grooved, they stick around. So you gotta be thinking about that when you're going to coach somebody. Is empathy is required? Because if somebody is perennially late, like they've been late their whole life. It's like somebody was talking the other day, and she said, "I'm not late. I'm on my own time zone." I'm like, what a great line. You're late on my clock. What are you talking about, girl? But just get that they can't change their behavior just because you ask them to. It's a grooved habit. You got to have a little empathy and help them devise some techniques to come through it. Detailed behavioral observation. Let's go a little deeper on that. What do I mean? We want to look for a performance gap. There are things that I look for just naturally, and I had to write these down when I started to realize that not everybody would know what I'm talking about. So I wanted to give you some very tangible things that you could look for. A lack of confidence. Have you ever talked to somebody and it's clear that they're just not very confident? You can hear it in their voice. Well, guess what? If they're not confident when they're about to start a task, what do you think the quality is going to be like when they're done the task? I'd be checking it myself, just because. How about this one? Somebody that uses blame and excuses to justify poor performance. That, to me, is a performance gap, and one that's worth digging into. Or this one, inaccurate or incomplete work. Again, there's probably a reason why it's there. Confused language. What do I mean by this? I love language. I love listening to the way people talk and try and infer the way that they think. Because you can infer the way people think from listening to how they put words together. And sometimes when I'm listening to somebody, the way they build sentences is confused. Like they don't have proper grammar in their sentence structure, or they use the wrong word. Now, what did I say earlier? The reason that my joke was supposed to be funny, a mind is a terrible thing to garbage. The reason it's supposed to be funny is because garbage and waste are synonyms, but the phrase only makes sense if you use the right one. I mean, they're still not laughing, Tyler. I explained the dang joke and they're still not laughing. But you see, that's an example of confused language. And if you use really the wrong word, it'll be evident. You can see it. The ones I often get a kick out of are when people say the wrong word completely. And Tyler, we've talked about this before, right? I mean, I think there's something in the millennial generation where they've modified the way words are said. And you used one a little while ago, I thought. I can't remember. If I think of an example or if I hear one of you say it, I'll point it out later. But a word like communicate is to communicate, right? But sometimes people want, from the millennial generation, add an extra ATE in somewhere. And I can't give you an example because the word's not coming to mind, but if they're using language that doesn't fit the sentence structure, maybe you ought to dig in a little bit because it's another potential performance gap. So confused language, missed goals, late submission if they're anxious about their work. Or my favorite one, if when you delegate to them, their first thought is, who can I collaborate with? Who can I work with? It's like they're afraid to work on their own because they know they're not going to get it done. So they go to the strong person to want to work with them so that they can, the strong and the weak average out to mediocre. And they don't want to be weak. Those are some things you can look for on the performance side. What about on the behavioral side? So the relationships, how are they getting along? Does the person have an inability to deal with others? How many times have you seen an employee go, I can't get along with so-and-so. They're mean to me. And you just think, what are we in high school? Grow up. Get along. Conflicts with other team members, complaints from other team members, or at the extreme, the other employees just shun them. Talk to the hand, not to the face. I'm not dealing with you anymore. And if it's more than one person, you see, the funny thing about people, what they don't always get is that if they have problems with one employee, and then they have a problem with another employee, and then they have a problem with another employee, the common denominator in all three of those situations is not the other employee, it's them.
Hello.
And they don't see that because they don't want to see it. So if they get shunned by a group or have difficulties getting along with people, there might be a great interpersonal coaching opportunity. Again, inaccurate and incomplete work product, blame and excuses for poor performance. If nobody's helping them, and they absolutely need help to perform, it might cause the performance numbers to go down. Anxiety, failed attempts to collaborate, again, because they're anxious, because they're trying to get other people to do their job. We all know them. So those are some of the things that we need to look for. And then once we've done our detailed behavioral observation, now we have to come up with something called a hypothesis. It's the most complicated phrase or word I will use in this course. A hypothesis is a suggested explanation for a series of observations or facts. This is what we think is going on. Now, this is very different than a judgment. Because if I see an employee that is in conflict with 4 other people, and they're late on their deliverables, and the quality of work isn't up to standard, I'm not going to come and go, you suck. I need to coach you because you suck. Right? That's stupid. That's just judgment. But I might dig in and ask myself, okay, what's one possible explanation of why all of those pieces of data say that they're underperforming? They're not getting along with people, they've got errors, they're raising their voice, they're anxious. Maybe they don't understand how to do the job correctly. So my hypothesis is, my suggested explanation of the facts, that they don't understand how to do the job for some reason. Just coming up with a suggested explanation. It's meant to be objective, not judgmental. Once you've got that, you need to find a way to validate whether that hypothesis has any value. And what I used to like to do is I would go to a peer, like a fellow supervisor, fellow manager, whatever level I'm at, and I'd go to them and say, hey, would you do me a favor? Over the next couple days, would you keep an eye on employee X and tell me what you see? And then a couple days later, so did you see anything in employee X? Yeah, I noticed that they're underperforming. They don't seem to be able to get along with their teammates. Looks like maybe they don't know how to do their job. And I'm like, thank you. That's what I saw too, and I want to coach them on it. But I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just my bias. Remember the out group? Wanted to make sure it just wasn't my bias. You don't tell them what you're looking for, because you know what? Hey, would you tell me if this employee sucks? They'll come back the next day and go, yep, they suck. How does that help? Doesn't. Don't tell them what you're looking for. See if they can see it on their own so that you get an unbiased perspective on what you're looking for. Okay. Continuing on preparation. We talked about see, I already covered this. I knew it was coming. In and out group. Got to be careful. Not even going to cover it now because we already did. Next, coachability. This is really key. I was talking about the difference between a behavior and a habit. and how we form habits. I want you to think about the behavior you're looking at in an employee. Is it situational, or does it happen? Does it seem to be related to their character? Is it something they do in every situation, in other words? They behave this way all the time. The next thing you need to think about is how often do they do it? Is it happen once in a blue moon, or is it once in a few seconds? And get that if they do something all the time and it happens in every situation, you think you're going to coach them out of it? You kidding yourself? You can't coach yourself out of this, let alone another human being. This is habit, deeply entrenched habit. What we're looking for to start out is something that only happens in certain situations and is relatively infrequent. If you can find something down there, you can help them. And if you can get a win in that infrequent and or situational category, coaching them is relatively straightforward. You build awareness, come up with a plan, implement the plan, and they will change their behavior if they want to change. Once you've gotten a win, they trust you a little bit more, they see the improvement, now you can move towards something that's a little bit more frequent or a little bit more character-based rather than situational. Eventually you get to a point where you can help them change anything, as long as they're committed to wanting to change. But don't fool yourself into thinking that you have somehow become a master coach and you can coach anybody on anything, because right now you are rookies that are just barely learning the skill set. I wouldn't take on a potentially difficult situation with a new client until they trusted me. I would start with something small and work my way up to it, because I know how difficult it is to change a habit. Is this making sense? Coachability is an important consideration. If you take on something too big and fail, how does that help you become a better coach? This is a little different than riding a bike. If you fall off of this bike, you might not get back on it. So start small, get a win, get a bigger win, a bigger win, a bigger win. If you do fall and it doesn't work, you have to reflect, learn, and adapt. Now, we also want the employee to be prepared. There's some things that they can do. Have them do an objective appraisal of themselves. Now, this comes back to the whole one-on-one thing that Gabe was talking about earlier. You want an employee to give an accurate self-assessment of themselves and share it with you, right? Now, if I don't trust you, what's the likelihood I'm going to share anything negative about myself? I mean, I want you to think about this. If any of you ever done an interview for a position, and I don't mean be interviewed, I mean give the interview. You ever interviewed somebody to hire them? And if you have you ever asked the question, well, tell me some of your weaknesses? You know how people ask that question? You know how almost everyone answers it? They take one of their strengths and say, if I do this too much, because I'm so committed, it becomes a negative. It's actually a really good strategy to give away nothing and turn a negative question into a benefit. But the truth is, it's a stupid question in the first place because there's no trust between the two parties. I would never ask that question. It doesn't make any sense to me unless I've known them for years. Unless I have a relationship with them, then it's okay to ask about weaknesses, because if they trust you, they're more likely to share. So one-on-ones are kind of important. Trust-based professional relationship allows you to get at the objective assessment of the skills and opportunities. And you can also ask them to complete a checklist. So how would you assess your progress against your year's goals? Especially if they're in a salaried role, they most likely have a series of goals they're supposed to achieve in the year. And where are you behind schedule? Where are you struggling? And if you go back to the gap analysis tool, how would you assess your needs to progress? I mean, where do you see that you need to improve? Is it a resource thing? Is it a training thing? Is it an expectation understanding? What is it? You can even have them go back to their position description, role statement, whatever they call them in your company, and assess where they're at on the competencies that they're supposed to be good at to be able to do the job at the highest level. Do you got a gap between where you're at and where you should be? Do you need to be a master problem solver, but you can't find your way out of a wet paper bag? That might be a good thing to coach on, right? So being able to do the assessment is key. All right, so what I'm going to have you do is I want you to take a moment, think about somebody that you might want to coach, and fill out the questions on the next couple of slides. It's a series of questions that are meant to help you do the preparation stage. So who on your team is it? Are they a high, average, or below level performer? Do I have a bias toward them? If so, what is it? Are they in my in-group or in my out-group? What behaviors have I seen from them that are a concern or are an opportunity? What performance standards have they fallen short on? What specific areas have they shown that they would benefit from coaching in? What is your hypothesis? What is your suggested explanation of why they might benefit from coaching? And who can you talk to confirm or refute? In other words, is my hypothesis correct or not? Okay, so I want you to go through those questions with a hypothetical case. Make it real if you want. I'm not going to ask you for details.